Welcome back to part 2 of taping on a house. Today we're going to be focusing on the second coat, which I'm going to be using, well, it's a North Star box. It's a 10-inch box. I've kind of got a hodgepodge of different tools. Like the boxes I've got are North Star. The handle I've got, which has got a brake on it, and I'll show you how that works here coming up. But this is a Columbia. My bazooka is a Tape Tech. My pumps are Columbia's, and I don't know, they all work together, so I'm not too concerned. All of these companies make a pretty quality product, so I wouldn't get too hung up on which brand to buy, so to speak. North Star, I think that they are, last I heard, I think they're out of business, but that's how old these boxes are. I actually bought these on eBay. The handle I bought separate, new. But the boxes and some of the other stuff I bought on eBay about 10 years ago, and they still work fine for me. I don't have a lot of projects that I do, maybe a couple a year that we do some taping. So they work just fine. So here's how a 10-inch box works. This gap right here is where you fill the mud into the box. There's a blade that comes across right here, if you can see that shiny part. And then on the back side, where the handle's attached, that part goes in, which when that's being pushed in, that's pushing the mud out of this gap, which is then going to be smoothed out with this silver part here, the blade. And it's got two little spots on each side right here that prevent the mud from squirting out the side. So as we're pulling this across the sheetrock, it's actually filling it in. And if you take a look at this angle, you can see how the blade is actually curved out just a little bit. Or it's in towards the box, which when the sheetrock is here, it's actually going out from the sheetrock, which causes or creates a little bit of a dome going out, which allows the sheetrock mud to shrink as it's drying out. And as it shrinks, and also for sanding purposes, we want it to be out just a little bit, so as we sand, we don't see any of the roll parts on the sheetrock. So I'll show you how this works, and we'll get started with second coat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the nozzle of the pump, I'm going to put that into the gap of the box, and as I pump this, it's going to fill up the cavity of the box. And it takes quite a bit the first time. And we'll fill it up to about that much. And what we're going to do is we're going to push this against the sheetrock right up on the seam, and we're going to kind of use this spot as a guide and have that go right on the center of our tape. So we've got that, and we've got the back part of the wheels. These wheels, they kind of float on the sheetrock, so they're going to be leading us, and they're going to keep this part of the box off of the sheetrock just a little bit. So here we go. Now as I got to the end, I was using this brake here, and what this brake does is it actually locks the head in place. If I don't apply the brake, the head just kind of flops down like this. If I push the brake down, now I can let it go, and it holds it in place. So when I get to the end here and the wheels fall off the edge of the sheetrock, I want to apply the brake so that the head just comes off of here really nice and leaves a smooth spot. If you look in close here, you can see kind of a couple of little bubbles here that didn't fill in. So every time, typically, I will run the box over that area twice. I've seen some guys where they are able to just put it on there, go through just one time, and they leave it like that, and then the third coat that skims it. But I'm not quite that talented, so I always go over every seam twice, make sure it fills in, make sure it's about where it's supposed to be. Side. I'll try and go slow.
cool.
So the next step in second coat is after we get the flats here done, we need to cover the tape on these vertical butt joints that we've got. And this is where, as a hanger, if you're going to be a do-it-yourselfer, it makes things a lot easier for the taper or the mudder if you can place your seams over the windows. And right behind us here, we've got an example of that. And I'll show you exactly a difference between mudding that versus mudding a full seam, and how much different it is, how much longer it takes, how much easier it is for a short one. I'm not going to say this is difficult, but it's just easier when you have a shorter area to tape. Now there's a couple of different methods or ways that you can use it, or I should say different tools. The way I prefer to do it is what they call a hawk. This one is a 13-inch by 13-inch hawk. It's got little rings here, kind of holds the mud on here. And then the trowel. I use a 5-inch trowel, which the 5 inches this direction, and then the 12 inches is for the length. So it's a 12-inch by 5-inch stainless trowel. I think it's made by Marshalltown, something like that. But anyway, it's a little bit wider than like a concrete trowel. I've seen some guys where they use a knife like this, and their finished product looks great. So I think it's all depends on how you start, what you get used to, what you're comfortable with, what you're able to feel, so to speak, as far as what needs to be, where the pressure needs to be applied to get a nice smooth joint. So my goal here is going to be to feather this joint out so that we don't have a really wide, thick part of mud here and then go to nothing in a very short amount of space. I'm actually going to go a full trowel width, maybe just a hair more. And remember, we got 12-inch trowel. So we're going to be a good 24 inches on the second coat, which is the one I'm applying now. And then when it comes to third coat, when I skim coat that, I'm going to go probably another 2 to 3 inches beyond that. So we should end up with a joint that's roughly between 24 and 30 inches. And a minimal amount of mud here so that when you look down it from the side, it looks like it's just part of the wall, and it gradually goes from one to the other, and then you don't see the seam. Now when we get to the bottom part here, remember we have a little bit of a dome here from the 10-inch box, and our goal is to blend this part in with the crest of the 10-inch box. So as I'm going across here, I'm trying to get it as close as I can to the outside crest of where we ran that 10-inch box. Now as you can see, when I applied the mud on there, we've got a nice little ridge here. Or I shouldn't say nice ridge, but we have a ridge here. And what we want to do is, as we're coming down, apply extra pressure on the heel so that this is nice and smooth and gradual, so that it blends from sheetrock, and then it gets a little bit wet, and then it comes across. But we got a little bit more monkeying to do here before we have the final one. If you get spots like this where it doesn't quite fill in, that means you're a little bit short on mud. So we're going to have to add a little bit of mud into there to fill it out nice. And that's what we have for a second coat. Now let's compare that to a shorter one. Takes much less mud. Put it on there. And we're done. So as I make my way around, we end up getting to the corner bead. And the corner bead is very similar to our butt joints, where we want to go from the corner and we want to bring it out here, push tight on the heel so that it feathers it out. The only difference is that I'm just going to bring it about 10 inches for the for the second coat here, and then for my last coat, or the third coat, that's where I'm going to go my full 12 inches and then blend it in, so I don't have to go more than one trowel width away from the corner. Typically what I'm going to do is I'll start on one side and then I'll do the other side to the same height, so that when I get down to the bottom, then I can do both sides coming up into what I've already brought down. And that way, if something goes over to the side, I can clean that up right away, like these pieces that are coming around here. And there you have it, a troweled corner. Well, there's not a whole lot of troweling that needs to be done in the house yet. We just have a few corners and a few butt joints that we've got to do. So I'll just take you along as I go through from room to room and touch things up. the last part we've got to do is, in the house like this where they've got the pine tongue and groove up on the ceiling here, right up on the edge on the exterior walls where the vault is not, there's that rolled part on the sheetrock here. And where that spot is, there's a little bit of a gap where they pinch the sheetrock and they make it thinner. So if we go like that, you can kind of see the light behind the trowel. We got to get that flattened out. There's better. We got to get that flattened out so when they put trim up on the ceiling, coming down on the wall, there's a nice flat surface that goes all the way down. And to make myself almost, well, darn near 8 feet tall, I'm going to be walking around on these guys. Camera said battery is exhausted. I said, me too, battery, me too. Huh? It's dumb. I thought that was pretty clever. So there's some spots just like this that have a little bit of a gap in there, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to leave that part with a little bit of a gap because they're going to put a trim piece, and I don't know if it's an inch, inch and a half, but what there is right there, they could get by with about 1/4 of an inch trim, and I think we'd be fine. So I'm just going to let that hide behind the trim when they get to that point. Otherwise it's going to make a bigger mess than what it's worth. Well, that does it for part 2. Second coat is pretty much all done. Stick around for part 3.